Well. Viktor Gyökeres is on strike, refusing to turn up to training. What does it mean for Arsenal? Welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm, Sunday, the 13th of July, a glorious day in London, in England, if you are here with me watching. And it's going to be a glorious day of sport as well. The cricket, the test match, it is delicately poised, the Wimbledon men's final, and of course, Arsenal transfer speculation. And I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend, Kaya Kainak. Kaya, welcome to the firm. How are you, my man?
I'm very good, FK. The sun has been shining. Looks like Arsenal are signing players. What's not to be happy about? It's all good, man. We're all good.
Well, you'd think it's all
You
good,
would. You
but,
would.
but there
You
are
would.
people not happy with some of the transfer activity that we've
Yes.
done so far.
Yes.
But there are people excited about what is yet to come. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So, Kaya, today we're going to talk about Viktor Gyökeres, the strike that he is apparently on, what it kind of means for Arsenal. I guess it's quite nice that it's the shoes on the other foot for once, not our players striking to get out. Let's not go into that, Warren. We're also going to talk about Noni Madueke just briefly because I haven't had you on the channel for a few weeks. Want to get your thoughts on that? That's certainly, caused a bit of a meltdown in some parts of the Arsenal fan base. We'll talk about the boys being back in training. Gabby Heinze is now obviously pulling strings on the field, on the coaching field, that is. And then we'll round up your thoughts on the transfer window. One or two exciting moves still yet to come, and whether you think they will happen. How you doing, by the way? Are you enjoying sort of pre-season? Are you enjoying the break, the time off football?
Yeah, I think last season was quite a grind. I felt at times, especially in the second half. Obviously, we had those amazing Champions League nights, and they will see us through for years to come. But those a lot of the Premier League games felt like quite a slog. It felt like you were sort of just getting through them, and I'm looking forward to games where I'm excited to see what happens. I mean, I'm I'm rarely excited for a preseason friendly, but this first game in Singapore, I'm fascinated because there's so much newness. Whereas last season, the only signings that came in were Marino and Calafiori, and then obviously Neto and Sterling right at the end, who barely played. So there wasn't that much new going on. But this season, there's so much new stuff happening. So yeah, it's exciting. There's a lot to talk about with Arsenal as well, which is it's I'm excited from an Arsenal perspective. I'm doing good. I'm enjoying the off season. I'm enjoying the build up to the preseason as well.
And the season is just around the corner. Just on the friendlies that you talk about, it does feel very unusual to have a very long and quite settled pre-season. I can't remember the last time that I saw Bukayo Saka, for example, turning up on day one of pre-season. Like, he looks fresh, he looks relaxed. The photos of the players look good. Some of them look a little bit jaded. They've had probably nice, deserved long holidays. But it does feel like this is the first time that we've had the group of players together, including our new signings, getting involved, and obviously the tour starts in a few days' time.
Yeah, there's very few players missing, aren't there? There's obviously Ethan has been away with England under 21s. I think if some of the new signings was come in, so Madueke, Mosquera, they need a bit more time off because of their commitment over the summer. But yeah, it's the perks of not being in that the abomination that is the Club World Cup, and yeah, the sort of ridiculousness of all that. And maybe we'll come on to that at some point today. But yeah, I think Arsenal are reaping the rewards. And we've seen in the past, I remember a couple of seasons ago, the Jesus and Zinchenko summer, Arsenal had a really solid preseason then. All the signings were in nice and early, and it allowed them to start off on the right foot. And I think with the difficult start that Arsenal have got coming up, that's really important this season. You can't go into games I know Man United aren't what they used to be, but you can't go into games at Old Trafford and Anfield in the first three and sort of be feeling your way into the season. You need to be 100% raring to go, and fingers crossed, Arsenal will be at that level.
Indeed. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you for all the kind chat, by the way. Hundreds of you watching live on YouTube already. Please do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. And it is easy, like a Sunday morning. I love that, Gareth. I love that. And Dan C says, what a beautiful start to the day. And that's where I want to start. I just want to thank everybody. Just very quickly, Kaya. I know you've been very supportive of the channel over the last few weeks. Hopefully, can you guys see that now on screen? What's happening with my PowerPoint deck? Has anything turned up? Has it all gone blank? There we go. Right.
There you go.
Thank you to everybody who's watched over the last few weeks. It's been phenomenal for the channel. Been doing lots and lots of daily content. Very distinguished guests, people very kind to give up their time, including yourself, Kaya. Second time back now in a few weeks. But here are just a couple of the thumbs. We've talked about Rodrigo, we've talked about Arteta, we talked about strikers, we talked about Norgard and our metronome in Martin Zubimendi. We even did a feature with Art de Roche about the secret of Hale End and what they're feeding the children there as they come out and become superstars. Honestly, it's been a real joy to make these sorts of videos. We have been absolutely phenomenal in terms of growth, in terms of new subscribers over the last few weeks. So do subscribe, get involved in the chat. I'm really enjoying it, and I hope you guys are too. Right, there is only one place to start. and that is, of course, that Viktor Gyökeres is on strike. The Arsenal target. I mean, look, it's been a long pursuit of a number 9. You know, there was long talk about Gyökeres, there's been talk about Šeško, even a little bit of, sort of Hugo Ekitike in the background, but it looks like this is the guy. And the news broke yesterday that he is now not turning up to training. He's going against the grain, desperate for a move, wants Arsenal and Arsenal only. What did you make of it all, Kaya, as it sort of unfolded over the last 24 hours?
When all the news came out last week, I was glad that Arsenal had made a decision. I was glad that they'd sort of gone for one of Gyökeres or Šeško. Obviously, the Gyökeres-Šeško wars will be something that we remember for a very long time, but I think Arsenal have obviously gone for Viktor Gyökeres, and to be honest, part of me was happy about that. I was definitely one of the people who I wasn't strongly in either camp. I could see flaws to both players, I could see upsides to both players, and I was quite excited to see which one Arsenal went for, and Gyökeres was obviously the one they've gone for. And I think we all assumed the second that Orm bomb dropped last weekend that it would be smooth sailing and Gyökeres would be at the Emirates holding up the Arsenal shirt in a couple of days, and hasn't quite worked out like that. And it seems that the sporting president Varandas has gone on a bit of an interesting tack in terms of maybe reneging on a promise that he made to the player. The player now feels very upset, and kind of fair enough. But I think it's something interesting to bear in mind. And you look back over Sporting's previous dealings with their big money sales in the transfer market, and this is the kind of stuff they do. Varandas has a tactic when it comes to this, when selling other big players to the Premier League before. I think I remember seeing something recently about how Pedro Porro, when he was obviously going to Spurs, there was a similar tactic where the deal was off and then it was on again, and then eventually the Sporting ended up getting the money they were after for Pedro Porro. And from their perspective, I kind of understand it, because Arsenal have set themselves almost a mini deadline with Arteta wanting Gyökeres in before pre-season, before they go off to Singapore, which was essentially next week. And I think Sporting know that. They're trying to use that to gouge the price up as much as possible. Viktor Gyökeres is going on strike to try and lower the price as much as possible. And it's interesting to see what will play out. I think there's agent fees at play here as well. There's various different little bits that need to be ironed out. But I see a lot of people saying, why don't Arsenal just pay the 5 million? And I think it's important that Arsenal, particularly under Berta, don't become known as a club who just pay. Because I think the next time you go into a negotiation, let's say Arsenal are looking to sign Rodrigo later in the summer, and Arsenal only want to pay 70 million and Real Madrid want 80 million or 90 million for him. If they see that Arsenal buckle under this Gyökeres pressure, Real Madrid will just hold out and say, well, we know you'll pay us eventually once it gets to the deadline. So it's really important, the messages that you send out in a transfer window. And I think Arsenal are sending out good, strong messages here that if they think there are agreements, if they've got something in mind, if they've got a price they're willing to pay, they're not going to go over it. And hopefully they can still get Gyökeres in nice and early, because, like we said earlier, it's a tough start and Arsenal need to get players in. They need to have players raring to go. But I'm also fine with the fact that they're not just jumping the gun or just paying the extra 5 million. I see a lot of people criticising Arsenal for haggling over 5 million. A, it's not as simple as that in terms of the money, the finances. It's a lot more complicated than that. And B, it's not a case of this individual deal. You have to think about in the long game and how this spreads out across the rest of the summer. I think people would be upset if Arsenal overpay for players, and yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Well, let's talk about what sort of unfolded, and your colleagues from within the industry broke the story yesterday. So David Ornstein, first of all, saying Viktor Gyökeres does not intend to report for pre-season at Sporting Lisbon amid Arsenal's pursuit. The 27-year-old is required to join the squad on Saturday, but he told the Sporting president that he won't play for the club again. A 5-year deal is ready, subject to the fee being agreed. Fabrizio Romano then followed up yesterday saying that the Sporting president, Varandas, as you've just mentioned, has said that, look, if they don't want to pay Victor's fair market value, we're very comfortable with that for the next 3 years. So those mind games that you talked about, especially with those links to Pedro Porro. This strategy is also making it more complicated for the player to leave. Nobody is above the interests of the club, whoever they are. We're calm, he says, but we did see how the Porro story unfolded. And then we had a football lawyer talking about Gyökeres yesterday on socials. I'm sure, well, you may have seen it, or you may not have seen it, but just to kind of summarize, he's basically saying on Gyökeres not turning up for training, like, you just can't do it. Missing training without justification is an infraction, and 5 consecutive unjustified absences or 10 absences are sufficient grounds for dismissal with cause. Now, there's a lot of Arsenal fans getting carried away thinking, oh, this is Berta mind games. If he doesn't, if he doesn't turn up to training, doesn't continue to turn up to training, he might leave on a free. So, I mean, that's certainly not going to happen. I think this is absolutely mind games, like you say, from the sporting director to try and get the fee that they want. So, I mean, look, it's turning a little bit unpleasant. It's a little bit almost sour. And we've had it in the past with like Cesc, as you know, reportedly going on strike, going to the F1. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, I think, went on strike before he left Dortmund to come to Arsenal, a few people have said in the chat. It's quite unsavoury. It's part of football. Yeah, I mean, it's not a good thing, but it's something that we should, as a fan base, probably be encouraged about because it demonstrates to us that he wants to leave and he wants to join.
Definitely. And you want players at the club who want to really be here. And the thing that's always stood out for me with Gyökeres is that mentality of he seems very single-minded. He wants to do what he needs to do to get him further ahead in his career and what he wants to achieve. And that's a good thing, especially for a centre-forward. I think Arsenal have had a lot of sort of, oh, no, you go first or you go first kind of centre-forwards where I think Gyökeres is like, screw you, I'm just going to bang the door down and do whatever I need to do. And that sort of selfishness, if you can call it that, is kind of what Arsenal have needed up front. So if this off the pitch antics translates into on the pitch stuff, then I'm here for it. I think it's great. I think it's something that he needs to do to force the move through. He wants the move. He's keen on it. Arsenal are keen on him. So yeah, it just helps, and it helps sort of push the deal over the line. And this is not insider information or ITK. I don't want to get aggregated, but I'm still relatively confident that this deal will go ahead. Just based on what I'm seeing, it does all seem like posturing from Sporting and from Arsenal as well, and from Gyökeres. So yeah, you've got to be confident that this kind of stuff will happen, and it happens with every single transfer. I remember with the Declan Rice transfer a few years ago, West Ham said, "No, we want 105." Arsenal were like, "Sorry, no, we want 120." Arsenal were like, "Maybe you can give you 80," and then eventually they met in the middle. This kind of stuff does happen. So it's very rare that a transfer that's this big and this high profile happens super quick. So yeah, I think that we just need to accept that this is going to happen. It's going to be slow. It's going to be a process, but fingers crossed it ends up with Gyökeres at Arsenal and relatively soon.
Yeah, indeed. And listen, for Sporting's perspective, this guy's been an absolute beast for them. Scoring all sorts of goals, breaking all sorts of records. I think in his first couple of seasons, he scored 66 goals in 68 games to win them their first league title in 3 years. It's massive for them to lose their hitman, and no club wants to do that. We've been in that position before, Kaya, as we talked about. During the Arsene Wenger years, particularly in that sort of second decade, we had to sell our talisman year after year after year. It's not a pleasant place to be. It is nice, if I'm going to be honest, that the shoe's on the other foot. It feels nice that we're able to bully clubs out of their top players. It's not nice to see, though, and I completely understand why they're really sort of upset and trying to dig their heels in as much as possible. Like you, though, I do think the Viktor Gyökeres deal will get done. It will probably be, halfway between what we want to pay and what they're asking for, and I think the hitman will be ours in the weeks to come. Talking of somebody else who's going to be ours in the next few sort of days or so, Henry Winter tweeting this morning saying that he expects Madueke and Mosquera both to be in at Arsenal this week. The Gunners are set to sign Noni Madueke, and this has really turned Arsenal fans upside down. I mean, what are your immediate thoughts? Because the news was kind of released quite quickly in a very short space of time. Over 4 or 5 days, the interest went from we've agreed sort of personal terms. We're now negotiating with Chelsea. A fee's been done, medical to be done. Like it's very, very quick. And by the way, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, and there are hundreds of you watching live on YouTube, very grateful. Please do drop a like, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff. If you want to deep dive into Noni Madueke's playing style, there are a couple of videos on the Daily Grind feed. So check them out. We look at playing profile, strengths, weaknesses. Just last night, I did a hypothetical with Rohan Jivan of the Canon podcast where I sort of said, could this guy play on the left-hand side? But we won't go into that detail. How does this particular signing grab you, Kaya? Is it something you expected Arsenal to do?
I think if you look at the players Arsenal have been properly linked to this summer, so earlier in the window, Brian and Burmo, Mo Kudus a little bit before he joined Spurs, and now Noni Madueke, it's clear that Arsenal have wanted a backup for Bukayo Saka, and they've not had that in recent years. They've had Reece Nelson and Raheem Sterling, neither of whom, as much as I love Reece, neither of whom have been up to the job realistically. They need someone who can give Saka rest. They need someone who can allow him to flourish even more and become the player that we know he can be. And in my opinion, Madueke does that. I think it's a signing that makes sense when you look at it. You can maybe take the fee out of it, and I'll come to that in a second. But when you look at it on paper in terms of the profile of player, the age, he's English as well, all those kind of things come into it, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. I know he doesn't count as homegrown, but there's a lot of things that make a lot of sense. And obviously people talk about the attitude. I've spoken to people at Chelsea and I've spoken to sort of people around that side of things, and they're convinced that that's maybe been blown out of proportion in the press based on sort of a couple of Instagram posts that were ill-advised, and obviously that penalty stuff, which I think we all remember seeing when he tried to fight Cole Palmer for the penalty and all that. But
can I just pause you there? Sorry to interrupt your
yes,
flow, but this is a really important point to me because we're all in group chats, right? We've all got those friend circles that we chat to. But Noni Madueke, what is Arteta doing? And like the common theme, certainly from my perspective, when the news first broke, I was like, oh, I don't like his attitude. When I say attitude, I mean like I did see the spat with his teammates on the field. I did hear the comments from Enzo Maresca saying that he hasn't quite got the work rate, isn't quite sort of focused. I didn't really know about the Instagram posts and don't really recall them, but you know the fact that you've talked to people who know the player better or know the club better, and they're actually comforting you and saying, "Kaya, actually, you know, wide of the mark here." And I know someone who's within the sort of football industry who's very fond actually of Noni Madueke and his personality and what he might bring. I think this is a really important myth to dispel.
yeah, yeah, and he's not a shrinking violet, which I fear may count against him in certain ways. I think he'll do interviews that probably are a bit maybe braggadocious and a bit over the top, and he'll have a personality in interviews, and I think there's a difficulty with those kind of things because a lot of the time when players have personality, we all call for players to have personality. We're like, oh, they're robots. We don't want them to just say the platitudes. But then when they have a personality, they put themselves up to be shot at. And I think Madueke falls a little bit into that camp. I've seen sort of comps doing the rounds on social media of his sort of maybe silly answers in press conferences and how he's maybe not conducted himself that well in the media. But that's what we want. We don't want sanitized, media trained players. We want people who have a bit of personality, and that's the way he plays on the pitch as well. And he can dribble both ways. There's a really good article on The Athletic, if you haven't read it, by Ahmed Walid, who's done a fantastic bit of analysis in terms of he can cut inside on his left, he can go on the right, which is exactly what Bukayo Saka is very good at. I'm not fully convinced about the left wing side of things. I've heard those reports as well. I'm yet to be convinced. But a thing that Arsenal struggled with last season, and I'm sure you've done the deep dive, so I'm maybe repeating what you said in your previous videos, but Arsenal struggled a lot in transition last season. They don't have enough pace on the counter to threaten teams, which means teams can come higher up when they've got the ball, or they can sit a bit deeper as well if they want to. And Arsenal haven't had a way to break that down. And signing like Noni Madueke makes a lot of sense. And if Bukayo Saka's tiring or struggling in the last 20 minutes of a game, this guy comes on. And to be honest, I'm much happier seeing him come on than I am Raheem Sterling. That's the reality of it. And the fee, I think, is on the higher side, sure. But the thing that stood out to Arsenal in their recruitment of this player is data. He's come up very high on the data, and that's exciting, I think. And that's obviously been reported out there. That's not from me, but yeah, and I think that's something that is exciting. They've identified him as a player who they think can really help, who fits into their models, and they've got levels of analysis that we don't have. So I'm excited to see how he plays out. The fee, 52 million, add-ons included, does seem high for a backup player. But to be honest, if you look at forwards across the league, if Kudus is worth 55, if Alanga is worth 55, I have to say Madueke is probably in and around that ballpark. I'd have been happier with 40 odd, 45 at a push. I think I could have justified that in my head. 52 does feel high. But, you know, if it means Arsenal are stronger in attack and have that more attacking depth, which last season we were crying out for. We didn't have anything up top for so long last season. And now we've got this guy coming in, which I think is really exciting. So, yeah, I think it's exciting all round personally. I know a lot of people don't feel the same. I respect that. I don't want to tell anyone how to feel. And I can see why people wouldn't be convinced by the signing, but he's a player I genuinely have always liked at Chelsea, and I'm excited to see what he does when he comes in. I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of what Arsenal need in the squad. There are questions for what it means for like an Ethan, for example, and those are the questions I am a bit more worried about. But in terms of Madueke coming in and offering backup to Saka, I think it makes real sense to me.
Yeah, listen, I can't lie and say that, you know, I've always rated Madueke and he's a player that would have been high on my sort of wish list for the summer. I've said that a couple of times now on the daily shows, and I'm going to be consistent with that. He's never really caught my eye as wow, this kid is amazing.
Yeah.
However, when you think about the fact that we struggled with teams that always sit back with their stubborn mid to low blocks, we have that one playing style where we either try and get it out to the right hand side, you know, Saka and pray, or that sort of tippy tappy passing across the box, left to right to left, and really don't have much penetration. You also think about Arsenal, we were ranked second for having the longest game time in a drawing game state scenario last season. So second in the league for that. I can't remember who was first, but these are all signs where it kind of suggests we need someone, or we need players that can create chances, that like to shoot on sight, that like to be aggressive and direct with their running and sort of carrying, breaking, like sort of running through teams, running through the lines. And this kid is quick. He's obviously talented. He progresses the ball, carries the ball really well with the ball at his feet. The stats back that all up. And he likes to shoot. Second to Eze, in terms of like shots per 90, sorry. So yeah, it's something different. And critically, back up to Bukayo Saka, I do think Mikel Arteta is going to do something crazy. You don't spend £50 million just to have someone, the understudy to Saka on the bench every week. I think he's going to deploy him in other things. By the way, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. The biggest of names in terms of guests on the show. The biggest of names in the chat as well. Thierry Henry has joined us.
Wow.
And he says, Eze is a must. Thierry, I love you, man.
He knows ball.
It's not Thierry, but I'm going to believe it that it is. We've also got, just to level out from the greatness to the poorness, Wayne says, I'm going on strike from late night lounges. This only works, Wayne, if you're one of the star people of a team. Easy to replace, Wayne. Easy to replace.
Now I see what I'm on the show.
Your card is marked. Indeed. Lots of people getting carried away about Jackson of Chelsea. Are we going to follow suit? Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
Yeah, that's what I'd be a bit more opposed to. But yeah.
Yeah, quite. That would really turn us. Let's move on to pre-season, and it has begun. Really good to see the boys, like we talked about earlier, back in training. Some of our regular first teamers already there. Saliba and Gabriel. Gabriel looks absolutely, can't even put into words. Saka's back. He looks ready to go. The new signings are there. You can see Norgard on the exercise bike and in a session with Martin Zubamendi. And Gabby Heinze, Kaya, dare I say, flowing locks, similar to yours. Not quite as glorious, but...
No, when I go to the barber, I ask for the Heinze every single time.
Well, there you go. So do I, and he just laughs. What's your thoughts on Gabby Heinze? Was that something that just caught you a little bit unaware?
I guess so, but I think Arteta has actually spoken about Heinze in press conferences before. And when he started at PSG, he was a young guy, and Pochettino and Heinze were the two sort of Spanish-speaking players in the dressing room, and they looked after him, and they're good friends. Heinze is an intense guy. There's again a good article on The Athletic about Heinze's time as a coach and what he was like as a player at PSG as well. And he's an intense guy. He's got that will to win. He's not backwards about coming forwards, as we've seen on these comps that are doing the rounds of him having to go at referees on social media. And maybe that will suit the Arsenal tendencies, given our sort of difficulties with referees last season. But I think if you've got another guy who's coming in as intense, has got the standards that Arsenal want, and someone who lives and breathes it in the way that Mikel Arteta does, that's a good thing. I think it's also interesting that Arteta now has not one but two coaching staff who have been managers themselves. Obviously, Gabby Heinze and Albert Stuyvenberg, who know what it's like to be in the hot seat. Obviously, Atlanta United is a different level, but they know what it's like. They know the decisions that have to be made. They know how difficult it is. And I think when you've got that on your side, it makes those sort of decisions a lot easier and a lot more sympathetic. Whereas someone like a Carlos Cuesta, who's just too young to know what that's like. Obviously, maybe if he comes back in the future, he'll know. But yeah, I think it's exciting. I'm still getting used to seeing him in an Arsenal badge. Him growing up as a player, I didn't like him. I struggled. But yeah, that's all right. We'll get used to it.
Yeah, we will. John says Heinze has already picked his favourite player, and obviously shades of Gabby Heinze's temperament in Gabby. Man in the Mirror says Heinze is our answer to Jason Tyndall of Newcastle. I mean, look, he's a fiery character from his playing days. Probably remember him more than most of our viewers. Has very much a needle, has a spice in him on the pitch. Riled opposition, riled the fans. I mean, I think this could be box office on the touchlines. Maybe Mikel Arteta has employed him just to kind of pick up the yellow cards for him. But Anfield away, match day 3. I reckon Gabby Heinze could be sent to the stands. I wonder what odds you might get on that. By the way, there are lots of people talking about Welcome Gyökeres, some news that's broken on socials. I can't seem to find it. I don't know if you've had any pings on your phone yet, Kaya, as we're live on this Sunday morning.
Nothing.
I know.
Nothing.
Yeah, I know Henry Winter has sort of tweeted on his way into his show today on the radio that he thinks the deal will get done. But we shall see. Let's sort of wrap up and talk about the last few weeks of the window. 6 weeks to go until deadline day. You've obviously seen some of the boys that are in action. We'll talk about Nwaneri to close in terms of his contract situation. But in terms of further arrivals, I mean, look, Noni Madueke is set to these graphics, by the way, courtesy of the brilliant now underscore Arsenal. These are
I
not
was
my
going to say,
talent. I
I'm
mean,
enjoying the Photoshop. That
phenomenal,
is
right?
that's different level.
Phenomenal, absolutely brilliant. And I get carried away when I see stuff like this, particularly the chap
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
middle on the left there.
What
Um,
number are they going to be?
I know exactly. Noni Madueke is obviously, I think, going to happen. You know, it feels like we're too far down the track, subject to any sort of horrors in his medical or something that happens. It's going to get over the line. Whether it's 45 plus or 48 million plus, who knows? And who cares really, as long as we get other business done. Viktor Gyökeres, we've just talked about. It looks like he is going to dig his heels in and try and get that move. And I love the fact that he's always said from day one, I want the Premier League, I want Arsenal. Like
Mm,
unequivocally. He
yeah.
is so hungry for this move. I love that. The one that I want to ask you about is Eze and or Rodrigo, who's obviously not pictured in this on screen. But Rodrigo, he's tweeted saying he wants to be part of Real Madrid. The fee seems to be going up from 80 million to 100 million to now 120 million. I saw yesterday on socials. Um, I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever been sure, Kaya, that he was really ever going to be a realistic signing. But you might have a different opinion on that. But we were talking to Eze's camp, quote unquote, 2-3 weeks back. What's happened there? It's gone a bit quiet. Any thoughts?
Yeah, the Rodrigo fee. I was recently on holiday in Sicily, and we were going through a market, and we were trying to organise a boat tour because we were going to go for a little island hopping tour and just sort of along the sea. And one guy was offering me €15, and I didn't. I thought that was a bit expensive, so I walked away and I went to another guy, and he offered me €10, and I was a lot happier. That, in my opinion, is the approach that you have to bear in mind with these kind of negotiations. That people get very fixated on Rodrigo, and I had a great boat tour for €10. You know, there's other options out there. Is the point I'm trying to make very candidly. Um, Rodrigo, I think, would be a good player. I have to admit, like you, I've never been fully sold on it. I think he would be an upgrade on Martinelli, but is he an upgrade to the extent of 120 million euros? If that's accurate, in my opinion, he's not. There's obviously the questions about him coming in, and I think you've obviously all seen the same reports that we have about his ability in big games. He's never quite wowed me. He didn't wow me when Arsenal played Real Madrid earlier in the season. He was kind of anonymous, to be honest. I didn't really notice him for long parts of it, and yeah, I'm not fully convinced on that one. That said, if he were to come in to replace Martinelli, I'd be happy with it because I think he's a better player than Martinelli. And I'm of the opinion, as much as I love Gabby, it's time for Arsenal to move on. Something that I've sort of thought of in my head, and this isn't a factual thing or a piece of information that I'm aware of, but it seems to me that in terms of profile, Eze is very similar to Trossard, and Rodrigo is more similar to Martinelli. So it makes you think that maybe if Trossard were the one to leave, and obviously those reports of Fenerbahce are still swirling. I know sort of cold water, to use a football cliche, was poured on them last night, but I think they're obviously still going around. And if Trossard were the one to leave, then it seems like Eze would be the more obvious replacement. And if Martinelli were the one to leave, then Rodrigo would be the more obvious replacement. My preference would be Eze out of those two, just because he's exciting and I like it. He's a player I really enjoy watching.
And
Uh,
Thierry Henry has backed it. So
there you go. There you go. So you've got the legend. Maybe you can have the number 14 shirt if he was to come. But he also seems to be really feeling himself. I don't know if you felt this last season. In previous years, it sort of felt like he's maybe a bit sort of a bit polite, a bit timid. Whereas last season, it really felt like he grabbed that crap Palace team by the scruff of the neck and said, "No, this is my team. I'm going to take you to the FA Cup final." And a player who has that ability is a player who can make it a top level team. And I see that in Eze, and I think that'd be really exciting. I have my questions. I work with a Crystal Palace fan, and I've spoken to him about this, and he says Eze would be a bit wasted on the left wing because, especially with the way Arsenal play left wing, the way they have the winger hugging the touchline, and you need an overlapping fullback, and Miles isn't that, and Calafiori could be that, but needs to stay fit for long enough to be that. And bizarrely, given how many left backs we had last season, those are our only two left back choices really next season. Timber can do it as well, but again is more of an inverter. So there are question marks I have over the Eze deal, but it excites me a lot more. The Rodrigo deal on paper makes more sense and is a more obvious fit, but I have question marks over that too. So yeah, my preference is Eze. I think he'd be a great addition to the squad. then yeah, I don't know. Should I? You want to say something about Nwaneri? Should I let you say that first, and then we
Yeah,
can?
I want to come back to you on Eze and Madueke very quickly.
Sure.
This is what I'm telling you, man. I'm so convinced now that you've just backed up the fact that Eze is not the wide player, would be wasted there if he played that sort of left 8-10 role, replacing Odegaard maybe in certain games. I think Arteta's going to do something crazy with Madueke. I can just feel it in my juices. With regards to Eze or Rodrigo, simple answer for me. I love Eze. I love everything about him. I love the fact that there's an unfinished story for him to write off. The fact that he was released by the academy, he wants to come back
Definitely.
and nail it. There's a beautiful video going around of him talking about how it was always Arsenal for him, and the pictures of him in an Arsenal shirt. I'm a romantic when it comes to stuff like that, and I really want it to to finish off with the perfect fairy tale ending. But I love him as a player. And to your point, the word I was thinking of while you were talking about it was he's arrived, Kaya. He really announced himself last season. There's no doubt in his talent. I remember his first ever appearance against Arsenal as a young kid for Palace and at the Emirates, and he lit the game up. There's a compilation going around, and he was so
Yeah.
so good. And there's no doubting his natural talent, but people questioned, could he deliver at the highest level? And he has. And this is, I don't mean to sound disrespectful to Palace, but he has grabbed that team and dragged them through and scored important goals. My only question is, could he consistently deliver that output when it's a game every 3 days at the highest level, when the expectations are there to win the league?
Can I just
Don't
offer
know.
a thought to that?
Sure, of course you can.
I don't think you need to at Arsenal. You've got enough good players around you where you don't need to carry the team every week. But if you can offer that excellence that Arsenal have lacked in recent times, then I think it's perfect. And an interesting thing about Gyökeres is his run sort of peels to the left in behind the defence. Arsenal don't have a lock picker on that left hand side. Eze can be that guy. It makes a lot of sense to me in my head, and I don't think that we wouldn't need Eze to be our main guy. We need him to be one of the guys, and
Yes.
that's all we need from him, which would
I
be great.
can't wait for that. VIP Studios, thank you so much for your generous contribution to the channel. It's greatly appreciated. I really appreciate you, bro. He said, I'm assuming, bro. He says, everyone cried Saka. Had no backup, no rest. Obviously got injured as well.
Yeah.
Now everyone's going mad. Saka and Noni as the two right-wing options is one of the best in the league. 100%. I can't disagree with that. Like, everyone was really upset when Saka did his injury, of course. The fact that he missed almost 40% of our games last season across all competitions is staggering. We've needed depth, and we need that, the floor, I guess, when the replacements to kind of come in to not be as high as it is. But I think Madueke is going to offer us a lot more than that. But VIP Studios, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for that. The last thing that I wanted to cover was talk about Ethan Nwaneri. Promising news that we are making progress with his contract situation, because there has been, I don't know where it sort of come from, but it's going to be Eze or Nwaneri, and Chelsea were interested in talking to Nwaneri, which we firmly sort of rejected. I think they wanted Dowman as well. What's the latest you've heard? And obviously, I'm not going to ask you a daft question like how important is it we tie him down, but it really is, right?
Quite important. Yeah, quite important. The latest I've heard is the same as all you guys have heard. In fairness, that Arsenal are pushing to get the deal done, and it seems to be going sort of. And listen, this is based on social media reports. This is not ITK, but yeah, it seems positive. The questions I have on Ethan is, so let's say in our heads we're looking at two players for every position. So I can't remember who it was that made the point about Noni and Saka just then, but that's your two right wingers. You've got two left wingers in Trossard and Martinelli. Obviously, there's potential for movement there. Two left eights in the form of Marino and Rice. Two strikers in Havertz and Gyökeres, Jesus as well as a third. And you look sort of, where's Ethan's role in the squad? What's he going to be? And that right 8 position is kind of his slot that you can see him fitting into. That's kind of the only space that is left for him to fill in the squad. And my thing is, if Arsenal go out and sign Eze and Rodrigo, then you're sort of thinking, well, where does he go in there? Because you'd assume Eze would then become a backup to Odegaard, or sort of competition for Odegaard, and Rodrigo would take that place on the left wing. And I think Ethan's big issue last season was that when it came down to it, playing every 3 days was something his body couldn't handle. We saw when he came in around the turn of the year, he was great against Brentford, great against Brighton, but then broke down with an injury. People forget that in that game against Preston in the Carabao Cup, where I was at that game, and he was excellent. He lit it up for about 70 minutes, and then he started getting cramps because his body isn't ready yet, or wasn't ready yet, to deal with the rigors of 90 minutes every 3 days. And people assume that Miles is a physical specimen who has really bucked the trend by being able to step up and deal with that. But a lot of players can't. And this was a problem for Emile Smith-Rowe as well, that he couldn't deal with the intensity of the requirements physically that you are put on your body to deal with it every 3 days. And I think Ethan needs that. The only way you build that up is by match experience and playing lots of minutes and getting those minutes under your belt. And as it stands, I can't see how that happens for him at Arsenal right now, because he's very unfortunate in the sense that his two positions are the positions of Ødegaard and Saka, who happen to be the two best players in our team. So where does he fit in? When does he play? I think I'd be kind of disappointed if it was another season for him of just Carabao Cup games, the occasional meaningless Champions League game. And we know that Mikel's not always the best at rotating and being romantic and giving young players those opportunities in those games. So I think JG Gunn has made a good point there. A loan to Palace would be a good move. A loan of some sort would be a good move, maybe away from the Premier League, so the spotlight's not on him as much, just to allow him to build up the physique and the confidence that he needs on the pitch to be able to deliver. And I think there's a fantastic player in there. That's not a hot take, is it? That Ethan Nwaneri is one of the best talents we've seen come out of Hale End in a very long time. And I think in the long term, he can really be a player who starts and is fantastic for Arsenal. I just think that physically he needs to get minutes into his legs and build himself up on the pitch so that he's capable of dealing with that, because it's not an easy thing to cope with, and lots of players struggle with it. Reece Nelson, for example, still struggling with it. Emile Smith-Rowe still struggling with it because, in my opinion, I've spoken to people a bit more in the know on this than me, they never got those minutes in their legs early, and their bodies are still adapting. So Ethan was picking up little muscle injuries here and there. I think Arteta managed him very well by taking him out of the team and not relying on him. So it'll be interesting to see next season how they do it. Do they start gearing up a bit more in the Premier League? Do they start using him in the first team squad, or do they send him out on loan? If they do, they need to replace him. And then when he comes back, what are we doing then? So it's a very delicate balance with Ethan. I hope that new deal gets done very soon, but there are question marks that need to be answered for him, and hopefully they do get answered.
Yeah, listen, I can't disagree with anything you said. I agree that his body's just not been able to cope. There was that time where he had a few cameo appearances, and then, of course, it just went very quiet. And, we're not privy to all the information behind the scenes, but we kind of assume that, maybe Mikel Arteta's fallen out with him. Maybe he doesn't value him, blah, 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 blah. Actually, physically, just not ready. And I love the way you described Miles Lewis-Skelly. He is the exception, not the rule. Like, he has bucked the trend. He's come in physically. He's just the most robust, incredible kid, really. And they are children. When we think about Ethan, there's been a lot of talk about potential loan move. I recognise what you're saying in terms of maybe away from the Premier League, it could go to the Bundesliga, maybe the Championship. But actually, if we were to take, let's say, Eze from Palace as an example, to give them Nwaneri for a year might be a really good move for both parties. But listen, that sounds quite disrespectful, and I don't want to get carried away on that trend. But I think a loan move would be better, Kaya, than just having him in those odd appearances for the Cups. Assuming we get Eze, assuming we get Madueke, assuming we get Viktor Gyökeres, and that our squad is stacked.
I totally agree with you. My thing is Mikel Arteta doesn't think like that. He will be thinking, what's the best thing for Arsenal to win this season? And the way he'll view that is keeping Ethan around as a squad member who is of an elite level, who will not drop the level if he comes in. I think there are. I have questions over that, and I have questions over whether that's what's best for the player for this coming season. But I don't think Arteta would see it like that unless he brought someone in to replace him. I mean, God, we still got Fabio Vieira. Think about all that. So there are question marks that need to be solved. The Palace loan I don't quite see, just because Eze plays on the left and Ethan's more on the right. If you look at the way Palace play with those two in behind the centre forward, he'd be competing with Ismail Assar for a position every week, and I think it could suit him, but it'd be interesting to see how that would work. I just think for Ethan, especially being English in the Premier League and young, the second he performs well, he'll be considered, the next Messi. The second he struggles, he'll be the worst thing we've ever seen. So I think it might be good for him to step away from that spotlight and get a bit of match minutes somewhere else, is my opinion. Although, I can see why Palace would be good. Palace are a great club with a great manager, and they're playing European football next season. So, there's pros and cons for sure.
There are indeed. Listen, the chat's been fantastic today. So tonight, I'm so used to having these in the
You
evenings,
got the
but
mind down, mate. But yeah,
I know, yeah, it is a morning show, of course. I hope you guys are enjoying these weekends. Obviously, we go a little bit earlier or whenever people are available. And Kai, I'm very grateful that you've made time today. I know you've got a very busy schedule. Test matches about to resume. The Wimbledon men's final today. Sinner and Alcaraz this afternoon going to be box office stuff. So Nicholas, well, look at that, 4:45 a.m. here in Chicago,
love,
the Windy City.
love it.
There he is watching Latte Firm. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. If you could leave a like before you go, that'd be very, very kind of you. Thanks also for all the super chats over the last 3-4 days. It does go a long way to the running costs of a YouTube channel, believe me. It's much, much appreciated, and that's from the bottom of my heart. Kaya is the man, as JG Gunner says. So what are your plans this week? Are you taking a break before the season resumes?
Yeah, we've got some exciting stuff coming up on TIFO, which is obviously what I'm doing these days. So yeah, keep an eye out for our videos there, and yeah, working there, doing all that stuff, and watching eagerly for the Gyökeres and Mosquera confirmations and all that stuff, and yeah, very excited times, I think.
Good. And your kitchen is looking spotless, by the way. I particularly like the dish tray. Everything's in an order as well. I love it.
Yeah.
Listen, excuse me. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate everybody making time for the chat. Tomorrow, we are back with Sammy Mockbell of the BBC tomorrow evening. Going to push him on Eze, push him on Gyökeres. What else is happening, Sammy? Join us for that. That'll be at some point in the evening. James Benge will be here with us on Tuesday. Phil Costa of the Arsenal Vision podcast will be here at some point during the week as well. And of course, we've got the Late Night Lounge on Friday. If you are bored, you can check out the content on the channel. If you like listening to these as audios, they're available on Apple and Spotify, normally the day after they are on YouTube. And of course, they are available ad-free on Patreon. And just on Patreon, the new season is upon us, which means more match tickets coming for the Patreon members. I'm trying to get my hands on a pair of tickets for the opening home game against Leeds United, which I will give away to Patreon members. So look after yourselves. Take care. Enjoy the Sunday. Enjoy the heat. Stay cool. Kaya, if anybody wants to follow Kaya, he's available at Kaya Kainak 97. We're going to leave it there. Take care. Bye for now.